So we have the joint and combined forces among the armed forces of the Philippines, the United States Marine Corps, the United States Army, the Australian Defense Force, and the New Zealand Defense Force. Together with us also, although they did not participate, are Canada and France. So we have a lot of nations participating in this live fire exercise.
On the morning of April 28, 2026, on a stretch of beach at Naval Station Leo Vigildo Gantioki in San Antonio, Zambales, a U.S. Marine Air Defense Integrated System, fired a missile out toward the West Philippine Sea. Seconds later, it hit. The target was a Banshee drone flying at around 9,000 feet. American and Filipino soldiers watching from a concrete tower clapped. It was a clean kill. That single shot was the public face of something much bigger. It was part of Exercise Balikatan 41 2026, the largest joint military drill the Philippines has ever held. And it landed at the same moment. Fresh satellite images on the other side of the disputed water confirm something Manila should worry about even more. China is back to building islands. Not small ones. Possibly the largest one yet. This is a story of two coastlines and two arcs in motion. One is the arc of Allied air defense, fired live in a Filipino bay. The other is the arc of Chinese dredgers, pumping sand and rock onto a reef called Antelope. Together, they tell us where the West Philippine Sea is heading.
So we have the joint and combined forces among the armed forces of the Philippines, the United States Marine Corps, the United States Army, the Australian Defense Force, and the New Zealand Defense Force. Together with us also, although they did not participate, are Canada and France. So we have a lot of nations participating in this live fire exercise.
The exercise in Zambales is called the Integrated Air and Missile Defense Demonstration. It ran for 4 days. It was not a show. Real missiles, real targets, 3 different drone types, a small quadcopter, a mid-sized Outlaw, and the larger Banshee. 3 scenarios, 3 different shootdowns. The smaller drones were taken out by 30 and 50 caliber machine guns mounted on the Modest systems. The Banshee, which simulates a large unmanned aircraft, was killed by a Stinger missile. The U.S. Army's Avenger air defense system also engaged drone targets, firing Stingers toward the West Philippine Sea.
This time, if you noticed, we used unmanned systems very heavily. Unlike with the previous Balikatan exercises, this time we had drones, aerial drones, surface drones. They were used heavily in the exercise. We had counter-drone operations as well.
On the Filipino side, the Philippine Air Force fielded its Spider air defense system supplied by Israel. The whole engagement followed what the militaries call a sensor-to-shooter chain. Radar detects, command analyzes, then the right weapon is sent against the right target.
Counter-landing live fire exercise is basically a coastal defense operation. So it's an integration of all the combined arms, utilizing land, air, and maritime weapons in order to coordinate the fires to a certain notional enemy coming in towards land.
Major Richmond John Kayabyab, the battery commander of the PAF Spider unit, was direct about why this matters. He said the drills were essential to sharpen interoperability between U.S. and Filipino forces in defending Philippine airspace. He also said the real value was in identifying gaps, what works, what doesn't, and what the Philippine military needs to fix when it gets back to base. That last point cuts deep. The Philippines does not yet have a serious counter-drone arsenal. Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro has openly admitted that systems like THAAD and Patriot, the kind needed to stop ballistic missiles and armed drones at scale, remain far out of reach for the country's budget. For now, Manila leans on the U.S. missile defense umbrella in the Indo-Pacific. That dependency is a strategic fact, and Beijing knows it.
This year, over 17,000 personnel from the Philippines, the United States, and from our partner nations, Australia, Canada, France, Japan, New Zealand, and let me also add, the United Kingdom. We stand shoulder to shoulder in this exercise.
The Zambales shootdown was one slice of an exercise that has expanded sharply this year. Balikatan 41-2026 runs from April 20 to May 8. It pulls in more than 17,000 troops from 7 nations: the Philippines, the United States, Japan, Australia, Canada, France, and New Zealand. Another 17 countries are sending observers. About 10,000 of those troops are American. Japan alone is contributing around 1,400 personnel. For the first time, Japan's self-defense forces are not just watching but firing. They are scheduled to use a Type 88 ground to surface anti-ship cruise missile to sink a target ship off the coast of northern Luzon. That is a major step in Japan's slow but steady military normalization, and it sends its own signal to Beijing. The drill also features the U.S. Army's Typhoon mid-range missile system, which has been positioned in the Philippines since 2024, and can fire Tomahawk cruise missiles. There is also a simulated firing of the BrahMos cruise missile, the supersonic anti-ship weapon Manila recently bought from India. A new wrinkle this year, maritime strike drills are being held for the first time on Itbayat, the northernmost island of the Philippines. Itbayat sits roughly 155 kilometers from Taiwan. The location is the message.
Generally, na-achieve natin ang lahat ng objectives ng ating exercise, and the most important thing is that we accomplish it safely and successfully.
Rear Admiral Roy Vincent Trinidad, the AFP spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, has pushed back hard on Chinese complaints that the drills are provocative. He has called the exercises lawful, defensive, and the right of a sovereign state. He has dismissed Beijing's accusations as expected, describing them as part of a wider deceptive messaging campaign. He has insisted the AFP will not be deterred and is prepared for any eventuality. While the missiles were flying in Zambales, satellite imagery was telling a very different story farther west. Antelope Reef sits in the western crescent group of the Paracel Islands. Until recently, it was barely a feature. The Asia Maritime Transparency Initiative, run out of CSIS in Washington, has described it in the past as little more than a sandbar with a couple of buildings on it. That has changed fast. Chinese dredgers began work in October 2025. By March 2026, satellite images from Planet Labs and Vantor showed the reef transformed. A MT1 estimates roughly 1,490 acres of land have already been reclaimed. That puts Antelope Reef close in size to Mischief Reef, which at about 1,504 acres has long held the title of China's biggest South China Sea outpost. The new landmass is large enough to host a 9,000-foot runway, long enough for fighter jets and bombers, along with radar arrays, missile facilities, and a deep lagoon capable of berthing naval vessels and possibly submarines. Over 50 structures, a helipad, and foundations for larger buildings have already been identified in the imagery. Harrison Pertot, deputy director of AMT-1, captured the significance bluntly. He told the Wall Street Journal that this is the first time in a long while that Beijing has reopened the option of building islands at extreme scale and extreme speed. The long pause in China's island construction campaign, which had run from roughly 2017, is over. The location matters as much as the size. Antelope Reef is roughly 162 nautical miles from China's Hainan Island and the major Sanya naval hub there. It is about 216 nautical miles from Vietnam's coast. That puts the reef closer to mainland China than China's Spratly Island bases. In a Taiwan contingency, that geography makes it strategically more useful to Beijing than the southern outposts. It is also a clear signal aimed at Hanoi, which has been racing to fortify its own holdings in the Spratlys. The timing is not random. The United States is at war in the Middle East. American forces are running a naval blockade against Iran, and the conflict has dragged carrier strike groups out of the Indo-Pacific. The USS Abraham Lincoln has been redeployed to the Middle East. The USS George Washington is moving from its Yokosuka home port in Japan to join it. That could leave the USS Theodore Roosevelt as the only U.S. carrier in the Indo-Pacific theater. The signs of a thinning American posture in the South China Sea are already visible. According to data from the South China Sea Strategic Situation Probing Initiative, cited by the South China Morning Post, U.S. reconnaissance flights over the South China Sea dropped roughly 30% in February 2026. Just 72 flights, down from 102 in the December-January window. Chinese strategists noticed. Pertot was direct again. He has said Beijing saw that the Trump administration's focus was no longer on the South China Sea. China is consolidating while Washington is looking elsewhere. It fits a wider pattern. Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia forces operate in what analysts call the gray zone, civilian by appearance, military in effect. Better island infrastructure means longer deployments, more patrols, and more pressure on rival claimants without firing a shot. Vietnam is racing to keep up. AMT-1 data shows China has dredged about 18.8 square kilometers of coral reef since 2022. Vietnam has dredged about 13.4 square kilometers in the same period. The South China Sea is no longer a contest of legal claims. It is a contest of physical presence, and the law on its own is losing.
So the Chinese Communist Party would like to steer up to second nationalism because of what happened last August 11.
The Philippines feels this most directly. In September 2025, China declared Scarborough Shoal, which sits inside the Philippines' internationally recognized exclusive economic zone, an island nature reserve. That label was not about ecology. It was a soft annexation, dressed in green. For the United States, the Philippines is becoming central to what defense planners call first island chain deterrence. The idea that a chain of allied territory from Japan through Taiwan to the Philippines can box in Chinese power projection in any future conflict. That is why Washington and Manila are pushing more missiles, more drones, and more advanced infrastructure into Luzon. Earlier this year, the two governments committed to expanded missile and drone deployments across the archipelago. American security assistance has helped the Philippine Navy build its first unmanned surface vessel unit, with Western Palawan as a likely staging hub. About $82 million in U.S. infrastructure upgrades are flowing into Filipino bases under the 2014 Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. The strategic stakes are simple. About 1/3 of global maritime commerce passes through the South China Sea. Whoever can deny it can choke the world. So here is the picture, stripped down. On one side of the water, an allied force of 17,000 is rehearsing missile defense, anti-ship strikes, and combined air-land operations. Stinger missiles are knocking down Banshee drones at 9,000 feet. Japanese troops are firing live anti-ship missiles in foreign exercises for the first time. American Typhoon launchers sit in northern Luzon. The signal to Beijing is unmistakable. Even with the U.S. distracted in the Gulf, the alliance network in the Western Pacific is denser, broader, and more active than ever before. Seven flags now stand shoulder to shoulder under the Balikatan banner. 2 years ago, that number was 3. On the other side, China is using exactly that distraction to dredge a sandbar into a fortress. Antelope Reef may soon host fighter jets, missile batteries, and a deep water lagoon for warships. It will not change the legal status of any disputed waters. The 2016 International Tribunal already ruled against Beijing's expansive claims. But the law in this part of the ocean has long given way to who builds, who patrols, and who stays. For the Philippines, the lesson is harsh and clarifying. Allies help, but allies are stretched. The country must accelerate its own air defense modernization, push harder on archipelagic defense, and prepare for a longer competition than any single Balikatan can solve. The drone that fell in Zambales was a victory. The reef rising in the Paracels is the warning. The next shot in the West Philippine Sea, when it comes, may not be a missile. It may be a runway pour.